The Menendez brothers' trial was one of the most divisive in court TV history. The story of two young rich men, Erik and Lyle Menendez, growing up in the lavish suburbs of New Jersey and Beverly Hills. Their dad was a record executive. They seemed to have life on a silver platter, but behind closed doors, things were bad. The brothers took a shotgun and killed their mother and father. Then they covered it up and lied about where they were. They spent tens of thousands of dollars in the months that followed until they were arrested and charged with murder. Then came the trial, where they testified about years of physical and sexual abuse by their father. Everyone had an opinion. The public was split, and so were the juries. Then, at a second trial, they were convicted and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Now, the case is once again on the national agenda after a huge Netflix series and a DA who thought they should be released. Tonight, we get the latest in the brothers' quest for freedom as we speak one-on-one with the newly elected DA, Nathan Hochman. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you aboard here on Closing Arguments. And I'll be honest with you, I thought they'd be home, perhaps by Christmas, the Menendez brothers. All the momentum was going their way. You know, it was the Netflix series. It was the general support of many high-profile celebrities and then other people, and then the public picking it up as well. Not 100%, but a lot more than normally would pick up for a couple of convicted double murderers. And then, of course, to me, the biggest fact was the prosecutor. The DA, George Gascon, was behind it all, pushing it forward. But today, ladies and gentlemen, is his last day in office, and he'll be gone. So the man who was sort of pushing this whole thing, and when you have the DA, the prosecutor, kind of leading the charge to have a couple of double murderers set free, you know, that's powerful. That's persuasive. It takes a lot of pressure off of the judge and everyone else who needs to be in on all of this to make the decision to give them a second chance, to say, okay, they've done 3 decades, it's time for the Menendez brothers to be set free. But now there will be a new DA who will be sworn in tomorrow. To me, game changer. He may feel the same way. He may come to the same conclusions. But this is a new set of eyes with a different sense of justice, perhaps, in this case. So the question is, with a new DA being sworn in tomorrow, what will this mean for the Menendez brothers? It's a big question. It's a big question. And guess what? The new DA himself, Nathan Hochman, is with us. Again, set to be sworn in tomorrow, but with us here on Closing Arguments tonight. Nathan, thanks so much for joining us. Great to have you here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. So this is the way I see it, and tell me if I'm right or wrong here. But George Gascon had a reputation. I followed his career through the years. He is a prosecutor who doesn't like to prosecute criminals necessarily, has a different sense of justice, a different agenda, and all of a sudden, setting 2 double murderers free became part of his agenda out there in Los Angeles. He also cited the Netflix series as being one of the reasons why he was thinking about this and taking a look at it. And now you come in having defeated him in the election. So my guess is you see justice a little differently. And all of a sudden, the first really big high-profile case that falls on your lap is the Menendez brothers. That's not necessarily, I think, the first thing you want to deal with is having to decide what your position is on whether or not these guys should be set free. What are your thoughts initially just about this being the first high-profile thing that you're going to be dealing with?
So again, we're going to treat the Menendez case like we would treat any case. And we're going to do a thorough review of the facts and the law in order to arrive at the right decision and then be able to defend it in court. As you're probably aware, the Menendez case is actually on 3 different tracks. In May of 2023, they filed a habeas action that basically introduced some new evidence and said this new evidence militated and compelled a new trial. That's the first track. The second track is a clemency track. That's a direct petition to Governor Newsom that says that, look, we should get out and you should sign something today to let us out. The third track is resentencing. And that's what George Gascon, my predecessor, initiated 12 days before the election when he was 30 points down and out of money. He organized a media event. And the reason I say that is that he got that petition in February of 2024. For 8 months, he could have acted on that petition, but waited just before the eve of the election to actually file the original motion. What it has done is it's cast a cloud of credibility over whether or not his position to ask to go from life without the possibility of parole to life with the possibility of parole, whether or not that is a just decision or just a political ploy. I will put the hard work in to look at the facts and the law, to remove any cloud of credibility over that decision, and then defend it in court.
So let me ask you this. How does it work procedurally for the resentencing? Because my understanding is that's something that the DA, George Gascon, brought. So if you evaluate this case and don't think that this should be eligible for resentencing, can you withdraw that motion, or is this still something that a judge has to decide at this point?
Well, ultimately, the judge is going to have to decide the motion, even if you seek to withdraw it, because the judge can disallow you withdrawing such a motion. But even if the judge were to hypothetically grant the motion, and right now the request is for 50 years to life, the Menendezes don't get out that day. What happens is then go before the parole board, and they'd be most likely eligible for parole. The board's going to evaluate all the factors that they normally evaluate and decide whether or not to let them out on parole. Let's hypothetically assume that they do. Then the decision goes to Governor Newsom's desk. He has 120 days to act on it. He can either agree with that decision, send it back to a hearing of the full parole board, or he can reverse that decision. And as an example of when he reversed a parole board's decision relatively recently, is that the assassin of Robert F. Kennedy, Sirhan Sirhan, had actually been denied parole for 40 years, but when Gascon refused to send prosecutors to the parole hearing, the parole board in 2022 granted Sirhan Sirhan's parole. But it went before Governor Newsom, and he reversed that grant of parole. So ultimately, if it goes through the resentencing procedure and gets to the parole decision, Governor Newsom will have the last say on it.
It seems, though, that the governor has spoken publicly about this and is sort of leaning on whatever the district attorney is, and that's going to be you, is going to recommend. I mean, he's going to be looking to you for guidance on this. Let me ask you a question, though, about this so-called new evidence that was part of the habeas motion that was brought. It's really not necessarily new evidence. It's alleged to be new evidence of an old issue, and the old issue is the sexual molestation and abuse of the Menendez brothers. But at the second trial, that evidence wasn't really permitted. So, and the case has gone through all the appellate processes that it can in California. So do you see that really as new evidence?
Well, again, new evidence has to be new by the legal standard, and then it has to be sufficient to warrant a new trial. In essence, upend a trial whose verdict came down over probably 30 years ago. It has been through the California and the federal appellate system, which has upheld that verdict. So you have to, in order to make that decision, you need to look at the thousands of pages of transcripts from the months-long trial. You absolutely should talk to the prosecutors, law enforcement officers involved, and the defense. And when it comes to resentencing, you should also look at the confidential prison files that number in the thousands of pages and speak to the victim family members. Now, after I've done that type of thorough review of the facts and the law, I'll be able to weigh in on both the habeas issue and the resentencing issue.
Let me ask you about the fact that we always sort of lump Erik and Lyle together because they're brothers, they're co-defendants, everything else. But I think when you look at the cases, are you going to look at them together, or is it possible that you could have a different opinion about one brother versus the other?
So every verdict in every criminal trial asks you to look at each defendant individually, because you have the evidence is beyond a reasonable doubt, and charges and every element of every offense against each individual, in this case, brother. So we will be conducting the same type of analysis, a thorough review of the for each brother individually, not some combination, in position to take on the habeas and what position to take on the resentencing motion.
And how about family members? Because my understanding is the family is split as well. And, you know, we're talking about Kitty's, I think, brother and sister may see things a little differently. What are your thoughts about input from the family members? And what if, and I believe it's the case, that different family members see it differently?
So the habeas motion concerning new evidence doesn't look at the sort of rehabilitation and what the victim family members have to say in order to determine whether or not there should be a new trial. The resentencing motion is different. One of the factors you look at is rehabilitation. You get as data additional inputs what the victim family members have to say as well. And so we'll consider everything, whether it's a victim family member get parole, whether or not it's one that says that they shouldn't. All that information is part of the matrix that we will be considering.
And I've noticed you said we, and obviously it's a very large office that you are now in charge of, but there were units that were created to look at these things under your predecessor. Is it going to be the same team? Will that team change? And what is going to be the process? I know the buck does stop with you ultimately, but how do you see that process internally now?
So internally, whatever prosecutors have relevant information that can help my decision will be prosecutors I turn to learn from. You are right, I am coming into this situation in somewhat late in the process, but that's what 34 years of criminal justice experience, both as a prosecutor and a defense attorney with hundreds of cases under my belt, has helped me prepare to do. I can review records expeditiously. I know how to ask hopefully good questions of all the different parties involved, and ultimately look at the facts and the law in order to make the right decision and then defend that in court.
And one final question, and yes, it's personal because I work at Court TV, but it's also, I think, for the public as well. Whatever the decision is in this case, I think will come under some scrutiny. I always believe the best way for the public to accept whatever happens in all this is transparency. So my guess is you will advocate to allow cameras and microphones inside the courtroom for all of this?
Well, again, whether or not cameras and microphones should be in the courtroom, or we have accurate transcripts and people in the courtroom who can report it, I haven't weighed in or made that decision yet. But ultimately, you're right. It is about transparency. See, one of the things about the interest in this case that I actually find very hopeful is that I'm hoping that people don't just stop with the Menendez case, that this has actually got their interest in criminal justice issues. They want to dig deeper into the Menendez case. Don't just satisfy the documentary. Go ahead and get into the court decisions that have looked at the trial transcripts yourself to inform yourself of this case. And don't just stop with Menendez. There are tons of cases out there that are worthy of people TV's coverage, and I encourage everyone to do the same.
Nathan Hochman, congratulations. Big day tomorrow. I know you, your family, everyone's probably very excited about that moment. So enjoy it, and we'll stay in contact. Best of luck.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's bring in our think tank, see what they have to say about all this. Joining us tonight, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Al Wunsch III, criminal defense attorney Darnell Crossland, and family law attorney Jennifer Brandt. Great to see everyone tonight. All right, Al, I'll begin with you. You just heard from the incoming, he'll be sworn in tomorrow out in LA, Nathan Hochman. What's your takeaway from what you just heard and everything else you know about this case? Do you think the Menendez brothers will be set free at any point?
Well, they certainly won't be home for Christmas, that's for sure. And it doesn't seem to me that that's a priority for this new DA. It seems to me that he's going to go through the momentous and monumental steps that have to be taken. He's going to take his time, and I don't know if they'll get out if they're even going to get out at this stage of the game. It didn't sound to me that he was overly sympathetic to their claims, and I think that life is going to be life.
You know, Darnell, resentencing is something that California allows and permits, but there's a process for it. And I tend to think that Gascon sort of short-circuited that process just a little bit, or maybe a lot bit. I'm not sure. What's your takeaway, Darnell? Do you think the Menendez brothers should be thankful and hopeful this time of year with the new incoming DA, or should they be a little more cautiously optimistic?
Well, definitely, they should be grateful that they're in the position that they're in, because it is a process, but it has to start someplace. And that process, in their case, started with Gascon. Wasn't the defense attorneys banging on the door trying to get something done. Prosecutor, who has an ethical obligation to seek justice and not just convictions, has said, you know, ethically, we think that there should be a resentencing. As Hochman just explained, it's a process. So even if they get resentenced, it has to go back before the parole board, et cetera. So I agree with Al, they're not going to be home right away. But in terms of whether they should be cautiously optimistic, I'd lean more towards cautious, because whatever the blood is between Hochman and Gascon is still boiling over. Because he said clearly just now that Gascon had this matter 8 months, and it wasn't until he was running out of money that he decided to bring this. So to me, it's a maneuver, a political maneuver, and not something that he truly believes in. It didn't sound like he was on Gascon's side, and maybe they just have bad blood, and it's clouding his vision as to whether Menendez brothers should get what they deserve. But based on what he said, I don't think he's on their side. He's probably less against them, but more against Gascon still, but it's going to be a bad result on their side.
Jennifer Brandt, what are your thoughts? What was your takeaway from what the new DA had to say?
I mean, I think he's going to take his time and review everything, as Alan Darnell pointed out. I do think that he was kind of thrown into this. He even said he's coming in sort of late in the game. This case has gotten a lot of momentum, a lot of press coverage with the Netflix series and the documentary. So a lot of people are talking about it. And his predecessor definitely capitalized on that. So, I mean, I think that he knows he's under scrutiny on this case. It is, you know, coming into office with everyone sort of watching to see what'll happen. And I think he was right to say, look, he's going to look at it carefully. He's going to do what's right legally, and what he thinks he can prove in court. So I liked his answer. I think he's going to really take this seriously and look at it in all different aspects, just like he would any other matter.
Yeah.
So I think that's the right answer.
All right, think tank staying with us. I think it's bad news for the Menendez brothers. It's just, you know, it's completely different prosecutor. And if you ran against someone who was letting people go, the first thing you're not going to do is set 2 double murderers free or advocate for it. So I think it's going to be a tough road, much tougher road for Menendez brothers.